Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 4.
Well, folks, welcome back to Gale Force Wins. My name is Jerry Carew, and I'm the co-founder, as you may know if you've been following along. Alan and I created Gale Force Wins in December of 2020. We uploaded a video to YouTube, and the rest, as I say, is history. I am with someone who I've got a little inkling about, but I don't know a lot about him. But I know he's traveled the world, born and raised in Newfoundland, and I'm going to throw it over to you to introduce yourself, and we'll see where the chat takes us.
Okay, thanks for the invite. Happy to be here. So I guess to start chronological order,
Yeah.
I guess. Newfoundlander, born and bred.
St. John's?
Actually, not actually born. I was born in Toronto because my parents, like back in the day, moved up to Toronto.
We'll forgive you for that.
So when I was 1 year old, they decided to take a move to Australia with no job and no relatives or anything, with a 1 year old baby. So anyway, I actually spent until I was age 5 in Australia. I had the little Crocodile Dundee accent.
Wow.
We moved back here in 75 and I lost my accent in 2 weeks and couldn't understand what people were saying and thought the bay was one bay. Everybody's going around the bay. And anyway, so I grew up here, and at the age 25, I guess, I ended up moving to Brazil and just went on from there.
So let's back it up a little bit. You were born in Toronto.
Yeah.
At the age of 1, you went to Australia.
Yeah.
And then you came back to Newfoundland at 5. So from 5 to 25, you were in St. John's.
Yeah, well, Mount Pearl.
Mount Pearl, yeah. Well, it's very important to make sure that people know that, right? But so
Mount
Pearl, and then did you go to university here? What kind of secondary education?
Yeah, I went to MUN and did geography. And I was really, back in the day, I was really big on environmental causes, and they didn't have an environmental program here then, so I did geography, which was close enough. Then I got picked the first year that the Conservation Corps was on the go here, and they sent a bunch of us down to Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So that's where I had an introduction to Spanish and first started tripping up on other languages. And the next year I got on a similar program to Brazil and met a girl there on the bus one day, my ex-wife, and came back here for a year in 95 and then moved down in 96 and stayed from 96 till 2014 when I moved back with my second wife, current wife, and our kids.
Wow. So we'll go back to Newfoundland in particular. So growing up here, it's always an interesting place. Your sense of place, I find, growing up here is partly because of the weather, because it changes so much. Tell us a little bit about, what it was like growing up in Newfoundland with parents who obviously were adventurous. Toronto, Australia, back to Newfoundland.
I think it was pretty normal. I mean, I grew up in Mount Pearl and, wasn't super athletic, played a bit of soccer and stuff. It's a long story, but I ended up going out to Gonzaga for high school, which I, wasn't in the zone. That was great because it opened up my borders, opened up to my horizons to a lot of people out here and stuff. And I think it was a pretty normal upbringing. Went to MUN, just did a bachelor's, and then just went out in the world.
It's interesting. I didn't say anything when you said you did a geography degree. My first degree was in geography, and I was more focused on economic geography.
Yeah.
Very interested in geospatial differences around communities, and then I did a business degree after that. But geography it's funny when you tell someone get a geography degree, they'll start asking, what's the capital of this, right? There's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
Well, what people would say to me, oh, you're going to be a teacher. I said, no, there's no damn way I'm going to be a teacher. And what happens, I moved to Brazil and become an English teacher.
Is that right?
Yeah,
So what part of Brazil did you move to?
First, I went to, it's a place called Cuiabá, which is in the exact geographical center of the continent. So you can't get any further away from an ocean. You're totally landlocked. And I spent 6 years there.
How many people in that community?
About 800,000 in that city, right? It's
Wow.
kind of like it's near the border with Bolivia. It's kind of all agriculture, a lot of soya and corn, that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's a big city, more than the population of Newfoundland, right?
Yeah.
But that's a fairly small city by Brazilian standards, 800,000. So then I moved to a place called Belo Horizonte, which is the third or fourth biggest city in Brazil. That's where my current wife is from. A lot of mining in that kind of area. And by this time I was working with power plants. And the last 9 years we were in a place called Campinas, which is about an hour outside Sao Paulo. So, I mean, every place had its things that were interesting about it. Brazilians are very friendly people, very really accommodating people. So it was a great experience.
My experience, I've never been to Brazil. My experience is with the food in various restaurants that offer Brazilian cuisine. I mean, it must have been just
Did you go to the
flavors galore.
the barbecue one? The death by meat, I call it. Yeah.
Red, green, red, green, right?
They're colorblind. They don't care. You have it red, and they still come down hanging the knife over your head.
I know.
Yeah.
Is that actually the way?
Oh my God, yeah. And there's different ones. There's kind of like low budget ones, and there's high scale ones, but it all works on the same thing. You go fill your plate up with like salad and all that stuff, and then they come down and, as I said, it's death by meat. They'll just keep coming out with everything.
So you're 25 years of age, you're in Brazil. It must have been just overwhelming your senses.
Totally, totally.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the place I went to, like I said, Cuiabá, which is in the state called Mato Grosso, which means thick brush. Give you an idea. But I mean, it was a city. That's even Brazilians consider that area hot. So
really?
It was typically 40 degrees heat every day, and it's just blue.
Humidity? High humidity? Or no?
Certain seasons it could be the rainy season, but usually it was a dry heat.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was hot. I had some buddies there used to joke with me. I'm always red. I've always been red, even here, and I was red down there. But some of the guys used to joke when I worked night shift, and they said I needed to pass lunar protector.
We've got you lit to take the redness out.
Yeah. Well, I am red. And no, it's just very, lots of cultural differences. As I said, Brazilians are very friendly. Latinos are very friendly. If you can't, especially being from Newfoundland, if you can't get along with people in Brazil, then there's something wrong with it. You don't want to get along. And, the driving, that's a very cultural difference. That's what, if you had to say one thing that irritated me about Brazil, it would be the drivers.
Is that right? Oh my God. Left side, right side of the road, which?
Whatever they want. No, technically the right side, but I mean, wherever there's a hole, it's like nature abhors a vacuum. Wherever there's a space, there's a car.
Interesting.
And tailgating and running red lights. I mean, I even had to do it too. You just have to, when in Rome, right?
Yeah. Do they have a lot of roundabouts?
Yeah. And I think roundabouts are great. I mean, I know it was a shock to people here, but it keeps traffic going if you know how to use them, right?
But it was a real, like, that one thing stands out to you, driving, hey?
Well, when I first moved there, and it was about 5 months before my mom sold my car here and sent me down the money, and it was enough to go on a down payment for a little Escort. So I'm there in 1996 driving this Escort, happy as a clam because I had just been on the buses before. But I had said to my ex-wife, I said, I don't think I can drive here. I don't think I can keep up with these people. So fast forward about 6 months later, I'm driving and I pass a bus going up a blind hill. So hold on now, I think I've adapted too much.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's you just gotta adapt. Like I would drive, so we would come back here for a holiday, and I'd be driving still in Brazilian mode. I'd be driving faster. People would say, slow down. But
I think part of that probably is the size of the city. I mean, 800,000 people and just the speed of moving around, is it?
No.
What is it then? What do you think? What's your idea? What do you think they're like that?
I think it's something in the water there.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It's just a cultural thing. That's you've got to go fast, and you got to be first to get to the light, which you then run.
I found Mexico like that.
A lot of Latin American countries.
Well, not only that, I found in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen in particular, the roads are really narrow, and everyone's going 120 kilometers an hour, and I'm like, oh man.
Like why, right? Well, for example, being from Newfoundland, we're very courteous. I'd stop to let someone cross the road. And they'd be kind of looking at me suspiciously.
Everyone behind's hitting the horn.
Well, that's why you couldn't do it, because if I did that, people would rear end you. But I'd stop sometimes if there was no one behind me to let someone pass or across the road, and kind of suspicious, like, should I go out? But anyway, I got over it, and so I had to adapt back to driving here. So I remember I was going out to Costco. It was about, I don't know, 7 o'clock at night, and I was stopped at a stoplight, and I found myself looking around. It was the fear of being carjacked.
Really?
I said, I don't need to do that here.
No.
So, yeah. But you just adapt to where you are.
So you're 25, and you say you worked. So what were you working at 25? And talk a little bit about your work evolution.
Sure. How I got in, because I met this girl, I was crazy in love, had to get down there. So she found a way for me to do a master's in geography at the university. And I was never really in the academic world. I just wanted to graduate and get out and work. But anyway, so I took on this Master's of Education program, environmental education. And so I was doing that for about a year or so, and I still was just learning how to talk, really, in Portuguese. And then a little American company called Enron opened up a power plant, and I had never heard of them. So I put in my resume and said, I think I can help you guys with something. And they said, yeah, you can probably help us out with translations. I said, sure, great idea. So I had not a clue about, electrical energy and power plants and stuff, so just kind of learned it as I went along. And so that was good. I was this power plant was being built, and I was there when it became operational, and went over to Germany with a group of operators to 2 months there to help them translating for them. Then I learned so much because I had to understand it to learn it. So then they offered me a job as an operator, and so I'm there, and it was the power plant could run on gas that was being built. A pipeline was being built from Bolivia, but in the meantime it was running on diesel oil. So as a new operator, of course, I'm there in the oil plant unloading trucks with my coveralls and stuff. I'm like, I went to university in Canada to come down here and do this. So I said, I'll give it a year. And it's something that I found during my whole life. Once you say, like, you resign yourself to it and say, I'll give it a time, and just whatever it is, things just line up. So like 4 months later, they offered me the job as the EHS, Environmental Health and Safety Manager.
Wow. And you were how old at this point?
Maybe 27, 28.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility for a 27-year-old.
Yeah, and who had never studied safety.
Yeah.
So I remember the plant manager at the time said, you understand environment because of your geography degree, and safety you can learn. So gave me a kick in the butt, and off I went, and I learned a lot. And Enron and all that stuff that happened with the financial tricks had nothing to do with us. We were power plant with a PPA, purchase agreement to sell to the grid, so it was all good. But when Enron did kind of become what it did, I said, I'm going to get out of here. So I went over to GE.
What year would that have been?
GE, I went over in 2002.
So Enron basically imploded in what year would that have been? Approximately?
It was still there.
We're not going to hold you to the exact dates.
I had nothing to do with those travel expenses. Had nothing to do with their troubles.
Yeah.
I think they started getting around 2001-ish, right?
So you were, just forgive me, but you were inside and you kind of saw the writing on the wall, did you?
Well, I mean, as I said, they had a 20-year agreement with the government to sell energy, so I could have stayed there, but I mean, I didn't really see much area for growth.
Yeah.
So I went over to GE, over to this Belo Horizonte, which is where I met my current wife.
Belo Horizonte community, right?
It's a big city. It's about 5 million people. Yeah.
Wow, never even heard of it.
Exactly.
5 million people.
Exactly, because everyone knows Rio, São Paulo, and Brasilia, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? And so, Belo Horizonte is a lot of people, greater.
5 million, that's massive.
Yeah. So I started another new power plant that was being built there. But then after 2 or 3 years, when that went operational, then I got into kind of regional manager position. So I'd be traveling all over South America, auditing, doing safety audits basically on power plants and stuff. So it was really interesting. I got to see a lot of the continent, but wasn't as exotic as it sounds, because people would say, "Oh my gosh, you were in Rio last week," and "Oh my God, last month weren't you over in Venezuela?" And this week you're in. I say, "Yeah, I see. Airport, power plant, hotel, airport." So.
Well, listen, after 40 years of business development myself, people think, "Oh my God, they say it to us now."
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
Live a dream.
Frankly, those are people that have not experienced the road life. There's not a lot exciting about power plant, hotel, really.
Airport. Oh my God! Yeah, I mean, I would literally be asleep before the plane took off. I just be so tired. Just head dropped. Right?
Let me ask you this: I've traveled in the Caribbean on some of these inter-Caribbean planes, and tell me a little bit about the flying between communities in Brazil. Back, this is what, 30 years ago.
Well, no, I mean. In Brazil, I mean, there's modern jets, and this and that. You go sometimes maybe to Venezuela. Arrive in Caracas, and sometimes you'd have a meet and greet because the company would send, because there had been some kidnappings before in other years.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd meet you and greet you and take you to the hotel, and then the next day I'm on my own, have to go back to the airport and go. And you'd be on, sometimes you see like DC-9s from I would have been traveling then around 2009, 2010.
Right.
But on some of these old DC-9s that were like from 1984, 1985, and they're just patched together and held up. But I mean, I never had any trouble, But I remember you talked about some of the small planes. I remember going out, I was backpacking once in 1994 before, when I was still young and free and no commitments. And we took a small, 7 or 8 seater plane out to Honduras, out to a little island where you could do scuba diving. And I remember I was back there in the plane, and the pilot is kind of there, and he's playing with the wind, just like you would do in the car, and he looks out and just lands, it's just, on the runway, the dirt runway sometimes. But I think a lot of people here, and including I was guilty of it too, think that a lot of, let's say, underdeveloped countries are totally underdeveloped. No. I mean, Brazil has got 200 million people. I've seen richness like I've never seen in my life, even back here. I've seen down in Brazil, but I've also seen polarized poverty like I haven't seen here either, right? So, it's...
Not to get into politics, but just to touch on it, what's the politics down in Brazil right now?
Right now, they're back to the left-leaning government. Lula is the president, and he's an interesting guy. I admire his tenacity and his drive. I don't agree with a lot of his policies and techniques, but I mean, simple guy. He was like some kind of a plant worker and became, leader of the party. And then on his 4th presidential bid, he got in, and he did good for the country. But then they exposed a lot of corruption from his party.
He was right-leaning, was he? Or?
He was left.
Yeah.
He is left, and it turns out, in my view, they were elected. This is back in 2002, I think. Elected on a platform of no corruption and stuff, but I think they kind of refined it once they got in.
Yeah.
So then he went to jail after he was
really.
After he was he had a 2-term limit, and then he went to jail and got out 2 or 3 years later. The Supreme Court suspended his sentence or something. Anyway, he's president again. So I admire his story, but again, like I said, I don't really admire.
That's resilience to the extreme. So in Brazil, is Fortis incorporated in Brazil right now?
No, I think they're down around Belize or somewhere like that. Right?
Yes, right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you have any experience with the Fortis group at any point?
No, not at all.
No. So we'll talk a little bit about you've written a book, and you've traveled the world many times over. Tell us a little bit about the book that you have, and we've got a copy here.
Plug. I like the title, as my buddy came up with the title. Say what? It means, obviously that something wrong was said. In my travels, learning Portuguese down in Brazil and translating and stuff, and also traveling around the other countries in Spanish. I mean, I I'm not afraid to put myself out there and speak what it is, although a lot of times you say the wrong thing. And a lot of times that's funny and it's very rich, the situations, embarrassing situations you can get yourself in. So I always said I was going to write a book someday, and I didn't know about what, and I was kind of, I'm 55 now. And I said, geez, I don't want it on my headstone, right? And he was going to write a book someday. So I tossed around this idea of writing. I said, someone should write those down, all these little mix-ups, right? Misadventures or mishaps or gaffes or whatever you want to call them. And I was talking one day with a friend, one of my wife's friends, and I said, here's my idea, but someone must have done that. You have the doubt, right? Yeah, someone must have already done that. If I thought of it, someone must have already done it. So she said, yeah, but no one's ever done it the way you're going to do it. I said, geez, you're right, So I saw a great caption or a great saying one time. It was crap or get off the plot. So anyway, I started really writing them down maybe 2 years ago, and what it is, a few are my stories, maybe 4 or 5, but I mean there's 50 something stories. It's all just talking to other people, contacts I have down there, or I might meet you and you said, I just got back from Germany. Oh, did you ever get in a situation? Oh yeah. So people would say, like the punchline, I said this and it was wrong, whatever. So then okay, I would take that and I would put that in. I have to kind of develop it and enrich it and put in some details. But every story is inspired on true events, right? So it's interesting, I think we need to celebrate the humor that can come from this. And not only other languages, like Newfoundlanders going away, just dialect things. Or you have people from Argentina, they speak Spanish. They go up to Mexico, where they also speak Spanish, and they say the same word, which has something totally different and inappropriate from what they said. So I'm working on book 2 now. I think it's going to be called Come Again, something like that. So it's an interesting experience. I self-published, so that's all. I'm just learning every day. I need to learn marketing now. Maybe you can help me with that.
Well, I certainly can. When you call yourself an an expert in marketing, it can be tricky because it's not easy. What I like about, and I said this to you before we hit record, many people think about writing a book, me included. And what do you think's the percentage of people who think about writing a book? It's high, isn't it?
I researched this. I researched it. It's hard to get definitive research, but it's something like, 70% of people say they're going to write a book. But of that, and I could be wrong with these numbers, but of that 70%, only 3% actually do it. And of that 3%, only like less than 1% actually get it published. Yeah. So it's a lot of people say it, and like I was doing, it just got to me. I said, stop saying it, just do it.
Well, it's interesting, and I said this to you again before we hit record. What I like about the people we talk to, and Gale Force Wins is about inspiration. Business is a good example. People thought so many people want to start a business. Yeah. What percentage start one? Very low, and it's not an easy thing to do. But the ability to take an idea and then move it into the realm of actually doing something is what really inspires me. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you say you started writing these things down 2 years ago. How long, when this book got printed, how long ago did you actually print this book?
Well, I mean, I published on Amazon, right? So you can do, and the first copies I have here are actually author copies. So I can order a copy on Amazon, pay them, I guess it's maybe cost and a little bit. And, so that works out okay. I actually did source, I have 500 books somewhere in the ocean between China and Newfoundland that are coming here, and I have bookstores, a couple of local bookstores have my books, and for example, Indigo said they're going to take it, and I'm trying to get in some other places. So, your question, like I haven't, printed, I haven't done a print run. Well, I have, but they're not here.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is, you're never exactly 100% ready to do everything, right? So you just do it. And I had this other thing too, that my dad was diagnosed back earlier this year with only a few months left to live. So I said, I can wait for everything to be perfect and hunky-dory, but what if he's not around to see it? So I figured, okay, so that's why I have this book out there. It's on Amazon. Some people are going to go to Amazon and buy it. A lot of people are not going to wait and have it in a bookstore. And I said, well, at least I'll have it here. I've sold since July. I sold, I think, 70 copies locally, and trying to figure out the online, that whatever's going to make it click there.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I got to sell 500 more now when they come.
It's interesting, it's just back to, your dad, and I know he's still alive, and, all strength to him. My mom got to see a little bit of the success that Al and I have had with Gale Force Winds. She passed away June 5th, 2021, but she's actually episode number 31, and we're on episode number 231 now, but there's something about letting your parents know that, you got something going on, isn't there, Tell us a little bit about what that means to you, to be able to here, Dad, this is a book that I've got.
Yeah, I mean, he went to St. Bon's, and he started I don't think they had kindergarten back then, grade 1, and went all the way up through to grade 11. My brother Rice finished out, and with the same group, and they still meet once a month. Now, obviously there's less and less. So he was, at the last month, he came back, son, I sold 5.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm a father, so I'm proud of my kids too, so I get it, right? And mom's doing the same thing, they're separated, but mom's up there in Holyrood, and she's saying, got a couple of books, I sold it, so God love them, it's just nice to let them be proud, I guess, to see their kid,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's amazing. Our parents deserve to see the success. And anyway, we won't delve too much into that. We might get too emotional. So currently, you wrote the book, but are you living in Newfoundland now, or are you back and forth? Like,
we moved back. So my wife, she's Brazilian, and we moved back in 2014 with kids and dogs and cat.
Wow. You're here 10 years now.
10 years, yep. Just fly right by. So she's working in the arts field here, right, doing playwriting and acting, and she, as I mentioned, she does the living statue down on Water Street. You got to go down and see her on the pedestrian mall sometime. I'm working now as an energy advisor. So there was the Greener Homes program, a lot of people getting money for energy efficiency and stuff. So I like that. I'm not making money, to support myself off writing yet, but I mean, it's only book 1. So, I intend, now that I finally got the first one out, the first book's always the hardest one, right? Yeah. So I want to keep writing. And I do like I've always, as I said, the geography. Why the geography? Because I was interested in environmental stuff, and I got swayed away from that end of the safety side for a while. But I like doing the energy advisor. I think energy efficiency is here to stay, everybody getting mini splits and insulation and stuff. And I think it's great, whatever government support there is for that. So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah. So, well, that's fascinating. 10 years, I just think, can I ask you this, without hitting a nerve, how was your wife's first winter?
Well, it's funny because...
And your kids, of course, wouldn't have seen winter.
They'd all been back visiting, right?
Okay.
So even my wife, so people say, I can't believe you brought that poor woman from Brazil back to this crappy weather.
Yeah.
I said, no. She knew what she was getting into. She's been here in winter, and she knew about it. We actually got married here on one of our trips back in 2008. So she actually doesn't complain about the weather half as much as I do. Yeah. When she got her citizenship a couple of years ago, I noticed she started complaining more about the weather. Maybe she thinks she got the right to it now or something. but no, she loves Newfoundland. She's more Newfoundlander than you. She's got. She hates when I tell people this, but she's got Wadiat tattooed on her arm. She did that in Brazil. I said, what's that about? She said, well, I was thinking more of the deeper meaning, like, what are you at with your life?
Yeah.
All right.
I like that.
Yeah. So we've showed it to like Alan Doyle and Daryl Power, and they all get a kick out of it, right?
At least you can put skis there or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, maybe that's next.
You got to get her some T-shirts. Well, hope to interview your wife at some point.
Yeah, she's a media darling. She's been interviewed all over the place lately.
Well, we'll get her on. So you're a consultant in the energy field, and I agree with you. As I said, I got a mini split 10 years ago. Never had the ability to avail of any of the programs.
You were ahead of the curve, yeah.
I was ahead of the curve, but I'd love to go retro and say 10 years ago. But anyway, I love energy efficiency. Tell me a little bit about why that motivates you. What is it about energy efficiency that you like?
I just don't think we should waste anything, and if we're wasting energy, then we're just, without getting too pie-eyed and stuff, we're wasting energy, and we're producing, and we're making more of an impact, and we're burning more gas, or we're using more resources. It's just why, if you don't need to, if you can heat your house, or if you can drive your car using less energy, and we know there's an impact. And I know Newfoundland and Labrador depends a lot on oil and gas. It's very important, but still, do we need to be using and producing so much, right?
Well, it's funny, this house was built, I think, in 1958, and I went up in the attic, I don't know, about 5 years in, and it was like, the insulation was blown in, but instead of it being this high, it was like that high. It settled. So I insulated it all myself. I think I spent $800.
Okay.
It saved me $200 a month in oil. Like instantaneous savings. And what I say to my family and my boys in particular, that savings is infinite. It'll go on forever, right?
Yeah.
So now I get excited about it. Sorry.
Was there take charge programs then when you did that?
I've never availed of any of these programs. I just did it and never even looked at it.
I'm gonna have to show you how to get into some of these programs after this session.
So have you do you have a website for your consulting business at all?
Well, it's not my business. I'm working for a company that does, for example, the Greener Homes program, the federal government, they farm it out to service organizations.
Right.
So I work for one of those organizations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, you've been around the world many, many times. You've been, I love Newfoundlanders that have been around the world and then you come back. What drew you back here,
I tell you, on those days when the rain is beating down into my skin, I ask myself the same question, right? What was I thinking? But, Newfoundland is the people, right? Yeah. I tell my wife all the time, you're not in Newfoundland for the weather, right? The people, yes, there's nice people all over the world, but Newfoundlanders, again, I'm biased, but just very easygoing, very, friendly, just, I don't know if I answered that question.
Well, for me, Alan and I were in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, and I'll never forget it. We're driving up towards the airport, and it's what should have taken 20 minutes, took us 2 hours because of, bumper to bumper.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll just paint a scenario for you. We're sitting there. The people in front of us threw a water bottle out the window. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that. Someone walking up the sidewalk picked it up, fired it back in. So, of course, this yelling match ensued. And I'm like, 2 hours to drive something that should have been 20 minutes. Yeah. No wonder all these, no wonder. I mean, they shouldn't have thrown the water bottle out. But anyway, nerves are frayed. So I get it, Greg, that, this place, I'm seeing some nerves right here, but the ability to just move around is fantastic and easy.
That too, right? I forgot to mention, anywhere, I live in CBS, but anywhere I want to go, I'm never more than 20 minutes away drive, right? One reason why I wanted to come back from Brazil is I was there 18 years, so I just figured it was time to come back. But, security and violence, I guess it's getting a little bit worse here, but it's still nothing compared to some of the places that exist, And Brazil, like I said, unfortunately, it's a very lovely place, very nice people, but crime and violence is just at a different level here. Like cell phones. When I went down there first time in '94, certain places, I don't even know if I had a cell phone then, but anyway, when I was there first, certain places you'd walk downtown and people say, don't take your cell phone out here. I never even imagined that living here,
Yeah, why? Someone would take it from you?
Yeah, street kid. I was actually talking to my wife once on the phone, and some street kids ran up and took her phone Well, we're in mid-conversation. Anyway, she chased after them and got back, which they say you're not supposed to do.
No.
Which I guess she just the adrenaline kicked in, I guess, and she went and chased after. Again, those just little street kids. But yeah, so we came back, crime and violence is a lot different here. And and my wife wanted to have the chance of learning a new culture and language, and she's done quite well. She's
Good for her.
I mean, learning English, learning Newfoundlandese. When I was teaching English in Brazil, they'd say, because every rule, there's 3 or 4 exceptions. So you say, this and that. Oh, teacher, what about that? Yeah. But then for someone to learn English, and a lot of people do learn English in these other countries, and then to come to Newfoundland, it's like, I didn't see that in any textbook.
Yeah.
What is wadiash? What is tree? I thought that was a thing that grew out in a field, but it's a number.
Yeah.
So I admire anybody, and there's a lot of immigrants coming here now, and I think it's great to increase, international people here and representation. But how they can handle the language, I was amazed.
How many languages do you speak? So I'm
fluent in English, fluent in Portuguese. I mean, I do translations even now in Portuguese, and I had a translation firm down there for a while. And I wouldn't say I'm totally fluent in Spanish, but I can get by. I can fake it enough if I don't. So 2.5, I guess.
How closely related is Spanish and Portuguese?
They're like cousins. Yeah. So you'd see someone from, say, Argentina talking Spanish to someone from Brazil who's talking back at them in Portuguese, and they're going back and forth, and they're getting maybe 85% of it. But luckily for me, sometimes they have those mix-ups and those screw-ups, and that's what my book's about, right? So.
Yeah, say what? Language misadventures. I love it, and we always ask people to give a little bit of advice. If you were to give someone watching some advice based on the travels you've had, the fact that you've had an idea about a book, and not only did you have the idea, you did it. What advice would you give to someone watching this video?
Related to
life in general.
Don't doubt yourself, right? I mean, yes, you're going to doubt yourself, but just get over it. Just do it. A lot of times you're not going to do it right. I mean, there's things, I look at this book now, I say, oh, damn, I should have said that, I should have. But, like, you're never going to be 100% ready. So just, and nowadays, especially if it is writing a book, for example, not to say you don't need publishers, but you can self-publish nowadays with things like Amazon and all these things. So you don't need to convince a publisher and beg them to take your book, and I think you need an agent and all this stuff, and each one takes a cut out of what you do. Just do it yourself. I'm lucky I could do a lot of editing and formatting. My buddy down in Brazil, he's a graphic designer. He did the cover, which I love. He made this little. I love this little globe guy. Yeah. And but you can do a lot of it yourself. So just don't doubt yourself, I guess is all I would say. Just be curious, and what's the worst that can happen? When I moved down to Brazil, I didn't have a dime. Didn't know what was going to happen. And I said, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just move back with my tail between my legs and carry on. And when we came back, I was 40-something years old, a middle-aged man, and I quit my job down in Brazil, and I didn't even look for a transfer back here. I'm out. I said, well, here I am coming back now with a bunch of kids, it's a bit different. You got a bunch of little mouths to feed.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we'll try it out, and if it doesn't work out, we'll just carry on.
Well, Greg, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you. We've been back and forth on text for about a month and a half, 2 months now, and finally had the ability to sit together. What I love about your story is that, you have the ability to reinvent yourself, and you're a Newfoundlander who went and spent 18 years in Brazil. I know very little about Brazil. Maybe some people watching know a lot about Brazil, but I say this to my son who spent time in Germany, when you travel, it's one thing to get an education, geography degree like you and I did, but education for travel is incredible, isn't it?
I think, and I've told this kind of jokingly to some people, that I think for example, Brazil again, not to harp on Brazil, but they have a kind of like a mandatory, when especially males, when you turn 18, you're supposed to do a year of service, kind of like reserve thing, right? I think every country should have, when you're 18, that's it. You got to go live in another country.
Yeah.
And I think people would have, cultural understanding, be a lot less wars and all this good stuff. But I said that to a client once. I was auditing her house. She said she had traveled around. That's why we were talking about this. She said, I'll take it one step further. She said, you send them away for a year and then they got to make their own way back. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think if you do go to other places and see how, not everybody lives like us. Our way is not the only way. So I think if a lot of people could get that understanding, I think it'd be great worldwide.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I want to say thank you for joining us on Gale Force Winds.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you've got a lot of interesting things to say. Author, environmental consultant, and just a general person bringing a lot of quality back to Newfoundland and Labrador. And thank you for bringing your wife here and helping 10 years ago to reinvigorate the Newfoundland economy when you bring a whole family back. So there you have it, folks. This is Gale Force Winds. Greg Whelan, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds. That's Gale Force Winds, WINS.com.